A very good welcome to you, Nasake Online, and welcome to our Roundtable Series. And we are discussing voter mobilization. In our previous discussion, we were just having a chat about some of the reasons why the youth especially are not going out to vote in their numbers. And today we want to discuss the effects of not going out to register to vote and in turn not turning up to vote. I have three panelists with me today on the program. I have Nqobizitha Donga. Nqobizitha, are you here? Please give us a quick introduction.
My name is Donga Nqobizitha, an advocacy and constitutional literacy officer from Zimbabwe Christian Alliance. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Nqobizitha. And I'm going to move on to our next panelist, Ndodana Ndhlovu. Let me just try and see where you are and hopefully unmute you. There you are. Mr. Ndlovu.
Thank you so much, Said. My name is Ndodana. I'm the coordinator for Zimbabwe Election Support Network based in Matebeleland. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ndlovu. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Ndlovu. What I'd like to find out from you, you are representing ZESN. And as you know, today we are discussing the effects of not turning out to register to vote and in turn not voting as well. Can you give us some of the impacts of those actions? Because we always say, it's a waste of time, and why bother? The government is like this and that and that. But what are some of the implications that we might not be aware of, especially as youth? And you've been working in the sector, and what does this mean in the immediate and long term?
Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.
I'd like to thank you, Yasake, for inviting me, especially from the Zimbabwe Election Support Network, to be part and parcel of this discussion. Our impacts of low voter registration are very disastrous to our Matebeleland. But maybe before I get on to that part, I would like to say, voter registration itself is recording the names of the people that qualify to vote, or that qualify to register and then vote. And in Zimbabwe, voter registration is a continuous process. I think people need to know this first and foremost, and that the figures themselves in the voters' roll are very crucial, not only for the delimitation process, the one you refer to as mapping out of wards and constituency boundaries, but it is crucial for people themselves to go on the register, first and foremost, so that they exercise their right to elect the leaders of their choices. Zimbabwe is a representative democracy, and for us to have our leaders, we need to go through a process of election, and the process of election demands that you be a registered voter first, so that the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission as an ENP is able to administer the election properly and professionally in the process of screening who should cast a vote and who should not cast a vote. And in Zimbabwe, in Zimbabwe, the people who are able to register are citizens of Zimbabwe who are 18 years and above, and they will stay in the constituencies or wards where they stay. And the registration takes place, like I said, is continuous. It takes place in all ZEC district and provincial offices across Zimbabwe. Elupane is Elupane, Nkai is Nkai, Ematobo is a case, and so on and so on. And with your national ID card, plastic or the waiting with your picture, and a valid Zimbabwean passport allows you to go and register. But I think people need to know this first and foremost. And in addition to those documents, one needs to have a proof of residence, a proof of where you are residing. As I said, that when we vote for our representatives in our various constituencies and wards that we are going to be dealing with here. So you need a proof of residence, which should be in the form of, for example, in cities, a city council bill or a letter from the landlord. Or if you are in the rural areas like Echolocho, you can get a letter from also traditional leaders, especially Ruma communities, colonial. So what I can say at this moment as we talk about voter mobilization is that it is good for all these people that I say qualify to register to vote, to go and register to vote and remain in the voters. Therefore, what is the impact of not going to register? Looking at the delimitation, you will note that from the Constitution, delimitation is drawn using the data from the voters roll, meaning that the people that register to vote are the people that impact on the outcome of the redrawing and drawing of the boundaries. So if you are not on the voters roll of a particular area, say Makokoba, it means that the boundaries of Makokoba will be impacted negatively. For example, according to the Constitution, for a constituency to be called a constituency, it requires at least 27,000 plus or minus 20% people residing in that particular area who are registered to vote. Give an example to say, Makokoba, if there are 27,000 people plus or minus, Makokoba itself can be a constituency. But if people are not registered in Makokoba to get to that number, what it means is that when Izeki comes to do delimitation, carrying the voters roll for Makokoba and trying to draw the boundary of Makokoba constituency, it will end up going beyond Makokoba into Mzilikazi, maybe into Richmond, Nguboyenja, Mpopoma, trying to look for the people that can fit to become a constituency. So the law registration means that our constituencies in Matabeleland are going to be bigger. Our constituencies in Matabeleland are going to be few if there are few people registered. And in terms of representation, we know the serious impacts that come with that. When we look at the representation up there in decision making, it means that we'll be having fewer people. As we speak now, Bulawayo has 12 constituencies from the 208 delimitation exercise. Then Mat North, the Mat South, they have 13 each. So the low figures of registration as reflected by EPVRI exercise now show that these constituencies are going to be affected. The constituencies are going to be few because of numbers. So if you had done mathematics, you know that. So if Bulawayo is to maintain its constituencies now, it must make sure that it has 27,000 plus or minus 20% in each. But as things stand now, we are far below that in those constituencies. So this actually will be very disastrous in terms of representation, in terms of governance, and in terms of the number of constituencies that we have. I think at the moment that is what I can say now. Thank you very much.
Mr. Ndlovu, you raise very interesting points, and you mentioned that, for example, you need a national ID and proof of residence. And a proof of residence, you said a letter can be accepted. A letter from your landlord. Does it need to be stamped by the police? What does it need for it to qualify as a proper document? Because sometimes what happens is one thing is said on paper, but when you get to the ground, different stories happen, and then you find yourself, I was turned away because I didn't have this, I didn't have that. So exactly. Does it need to be stamped by any other authority for it to be admissible?
Thank you very much for that question. Actually, there are proof of residence that require stamp. For example, umuntu angakubhalela incwadi, just incwadi leyo kudala ayipost laphana nje. Iyabuya ile stamp sepost, it becomes official. Bill cancel, whether it has a stamp or it doesn't have a stamp, but the fact that it's written on a bill cancel logo, it's acceptable. Incwadi kalandlord, it doesn't have to be stamped. But to cut off ama-headaches wonke lawa, at a registration center like at a ZEC office, there are affidavits that you can sign in place of any of the letters that might not be maybe say genuine like. But any letter that identifies you that you are residing in that area, whether it is stamped or not stamped, it's working. It's unfortunate. I'm not so sure where in the Electoral Act we have the list of the proof of residence that are required, but stamp the land, unless maybe you have a lease agreement. Again, I know the lease agreement, most individuals will not even have a stamp, but it is acceptable.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Ndlovu, I keep going back to probably the causes why people don't register, like things like that. In national ID already means that there are some people who have issues. Voter registration is not accessible to everybody. So we already have an issue of people having to access the documents before they can get to register to vote and before they can get to vote. What type of assistance, I know this is totally an aside, we're discussing a different issue, but for people who don't have IDs, where can they get assistance for getting IDs, where they'll be able to get to the process? For example, ID, we do have instances like that in rural areas. Where can they go to for help?
Thanks for that question. It's actually not an aside, because what makes most people fail to register, and the part of those inhibiting factors is the issue of distances to where registration is. For example, think of Ikomoza and the registration center is a Lupane center, and that person has to incur expenses to go and register there. Why? Because of most children, or even most children of our age, do not have documents. And there's something that some people call Injiva syndrome, where most people who are supposed to be registering here are not around to register because of some economic issues. So even now, as we speak, we're in Bulawayo. If you are to go to ZEC office to register, the office is not conveniently located. It's a Famona, and somebody has to board. It takes twice. They don't have access to ZEC offices directly, or you have to walk. I think I measured to walk with ZEC office from my office about 6 kilometers. I usually go there. So those distances, they are inhibiting factors. But for the documents, this one has nothing to do with the EMP, the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission. You have to go to Registrar General. And with Registrar General, you all know the challenges that are there for you to get a document, especially if you are old. Or if you are older than expected to get that document. But Ulama lawyers, I think we have ama lawyers around here who can assist, especially maybe writing affidavits, etc., etc. I'm not so very conversant how they assist people to go and get ama IDs and ama birth certificate. But if somebody completely has no proof that is required to register General, there is a way through our lawyer to do it. And I think there are some organizations, again, some child organization that can also assist to make sure that the person gets the most needed document, like the birth certificate and the ID.
Thank you, Mr. Ndlovu. I think the most important takeaway for me is that For a constituency to be acknowledged as a constituency, it needs to have 27,000 registered voters. This is not 27,000 residents. It is 27,000 registered voters for it to be considered a constituency. So already, if one does not go out to register to vote, you've already impacted your area before you even get to the voting process. So it is so important to get out there. 27,000 people form a constituency. So people cannot cry later and say, our constituency has been made wider. And in it being made wider, whoever you appoint has got a bigger area to have to serve. So that's one of the most important reasons why we need to go out and register to vote. 27,000 people is what it takes to form a constituency. Thank you so much, Mr. Ndlovu. I would like to move on to Nqobizitha to give us some other impacts as well of not...
Thank you very much. Maybe before...
Yes, Mr. Ndlovu.
Maybe before you move on to Nqobizitha.
Yeah, Baba.
Is 27,000 plus or minus 20%, which means there can be 20% less or 20% more.
Okay. So it's 27,000 plus or minus 20%.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much for that clarification. But to be on the safe side, make sure it's 27,000. So I'd like to cross over to Nqobizitha Donga. Hi there. Hi. So one of the major issues right now is the impact on not registering to vote is on constituencies. What are the other effects that we might not be aware of that come about from not being a citizen who stands up, registers to vote, and eventually gets to vote?
All right, maybe before I answer you that, I have to pay homage to Ndlovu. He has been, he is one of those people that taught me umsebenzi wokuvota, ukuvotisa, ukuqakatheka kokuvota. I think I have to applaud Mr. Ndodana for that. And secondly, I remember in the year 2000 or 1999, somewhere, 2000, I remember, I remember I got a hold of the Chronicle. Ngathi mvula first page eChronicle. The first page at MDC 57, ZANU-PF 62, something like that. So I think what is that? Those were the results from the 2000 elections. I was very young, but I was intrigued to note on how elections are done in Zimbabwe. So it's one of the things that really pushed me to be a registered voter once I attained the age of 18. And for the benefit of doubt, I am a registered voter. Yeah, i-constituency yami ngivotela eNketa, ngivotela eAgape College. So ngithemba sonke siyakwazi ukuthi uqakathekile ukuthi sivote. 2008 I voted, 2013 I voted, 2018 I also voted, and I'm looking forward to voting in 2023. So I think I've laid the foundation for the importance of voting. Maybe Mpatintambo, share.
If not, if we can't share, then we'll just make it available we'll attach it on the chat and send it through to our participants. But let me just try now.
All right. Inkulumo eningi good document lenalelo, I believe it was going to help quite a number of people. I was looking at two generations of voters. I wanted us to look at the what I termed the $0 voters and what I call the Generation Z voters, which in essence are people that were born in the year 2000. Generation Z are people that were born in the year 2000. So I wanted to bring to the discussion an important point in terms of the people or the voters that were born in the year 2000 going up. In 2018, if we can recall, they were voting for the first time. So I wanted us to have a discussion on what were the experiences, or what were the challenges, or what were some of the keynote discussions from that particular group. And also, it's also important for us to have an appreciation of the group which I termed the Zindela voters. These were the people that voted in probably from 1980 up to 2000. So these groups have got differing experiences in terms of being able to vote and the ability to influence other generations to vote. So I think let me just try to share from my end as well, so that we help and assist those people that
Fantastic. Thank you.
all right. Maybe we just let's just skip that first part. We go on to the next slide. All right, let me try to share from my end. I think we have actually made it easier for me to share.
Those of you who are joining us now, you're part of the Roundtable Series, and we're talking about voter mobilization. And today we are discussing the impacts of voter apathy. This means the impact that it has on constituencies and on society as a whole. Earlier on, we had a discussion with Mr. Ndlovu, and he was telling us about the effects, for example, on constituencies. You need 27,000 registered people to make up a constituency, give or take 20%. So if you do not have 27,000 people, your constituency will have to grow big enough to accommodate 27,000 people. He gave an example of what you have a suburb like Mpopoma. I'll use Mpopoma because that's where I come from. In Mpopoma, if we don't register to vote and our numbers don't reach 27,000, it will extend to Onjube, Guyele, and go all the way out to the number 6 and things like that. So if more people get to actually register and vote, your constituency will be acknowledged as a group of 27,000 people, and therefore that will mean closer polling centers for you as well, and also less room for the person you appoint to lead you, your MP, your councillor, things like that. They will have smaller areas to cover because your constituencies are smaller and tighter and closer packed together. So right now we're having a chat with Donga Nqobizitha, and he was just giving us more on the impact of voter apathy. And we're trying to share a document, but unfortunately technology is vexing me. And what we're going to do, we're just going to proceed with the discussion and see what he has to say. So he's our second speaker for today. So Nqobizitha, any joy your end?
Okay, I'm still trying to share the document, but I really wanted to give an analysis of the two generation of voters between the people that were born that started voting in 1980 up to 2000, and those that started voting. Now we can proceed. I've seen it. I want us to look at the brief demographics of Bulawayo and Matabele, and I think this is one in terms of the population and stuff. So if you look at the population in Bulawayo, Matabele North and Matabele South, vis-a-vis people that were eligible to vote in the year 2018, you can see that it's almost Bulawayo in 2020, and also almost half of the population in Matabele North voted in 2018, and also about a third of the population in Matabele South voted in 2018. If we can go to the next slide, please.
Okay.
Right, this one, the list of constituencies in Bulawayo and Matabele South and North. This one, it's important to note that in 1980, we had a party list system, which it was a complicated system of voting. Then in the year 2000, we had 8 constituencies in Bulawayo, 12 in 2018. In 2000, we had 7 in Mat North, 13 in 2018, 8 in the year 2000, and 13 in the year 2018. This is important to note as we are going into the electoral period which is one, which these are the trends in terms of the constituencies in Bulawayo. I only limited my presentation to the parliamentary processes and not looking at the wards, so that we see how the constituencies were delimited or limited at that time. Let's go on to the next slide. I think this is, or these are the things that people should take note of as we are looking at the importance of voter registration. Perhaps the reason why there is voter apathy in Matweland and Bulawayo is because people are not realizing that by voting, umuntu uyabe esenza lokho okubhalwe ku-constitution. It's a constitutional right to vote as a citizen. So if you don't vote or participate in any electoral processes, you won't be fulfilling your constitutional right, because at the end of the day, we are led by the constitution, we are informed by the constitution in terms of what we do. Then secondly, representative democracy will be at play therein. What we call by representative democracy is that abantu laba esibavotelayo, or people that we entrust with leadership, are people that are going to, in essence, improve our lives through maybe service delivery and social accountability. So if you don't participate or register to vote, you won't be able to exercise this representative democracy. So these are the two main things that I wanted us to take note of as we are trying to push this agenda of voter registration. If we can go on to the next slide, please.
Can I have the next slide?
Right. On this one, Generation Z, abanye bathi ngama-2000, abanye angikwazi ukuthi babiza ngani. These were people that were born in the year 2000. Abanye bakhona beqalisa ukuvota ngo-2018. This Generation Z voted in 2018, like I said, and from statistics that I got, about 45% of the registered voters fell under this Generation Z or AMA 2000 category. And maybe we need to ask ourselves, with the numbers, the low numbers that we're getting from this region of people that are registering to vote, what could be the reason? Is it because they had nasty experiences from the 2018 elections, or the elections didn't didn't entice them to participate in electoral processes? So maybe this is ama 2000 lawa, why abanye bakhona bengafuni ukuregister kathesi? Is it because ngo-2018 abazange bekholise the electoral process or not? And also we also need to ask ourselves, from this election that we're looking forward to in 2023, what is enticing them to participate in the process? Are they tired? Are they motivated to participate in the election? Then vis-a-vis the Generation Z, there is also the generation which we call the Ndodana voters. If we can go to the next slide. Right, Ndodana voters, these are people that we, but I'm not seeing the text here. I'm not sure why it's not showing. The Ndodana voters, these are people that were born in 1980. They've participated in more than 6 or 7 elections. And we need to ask ourselves, why are these Ndodana voters are not eager to register to vote? Or why are they not influencing the voting processes? Because the Generation Z or AMA 2000 are influenced by the Zim dollar voters. So there is need for us to ask ourselves, why are these Zim dollar voters in Mathweleland and Bulawayo not influencing the previous generation that I spoke about? Let's go on to the next slide. Right, we also need to ask ourselves, what could be the reasons why people in Mat, North, South, and Bulawayo are not registering to vote? This Ubabu Ndodana Ndhlovu, when he was talking about the issues of identification documents, we find out that in most cases, or perhaps the reason why people are not registering is because they don't have IDs to go and register to vote. Singakhangela iMathweleland, we've got past atrocities that could have influenced this process of people not going to register to vote. And also, secondly, perhaps the reason why people in Mathweleland are not registering to vote is the Injiva or the diaspora effect. People from this region, they don't see the reason why they should participate in mainstream national processes. But if I register to vote, what is going to change the region in terms of marginalization? So they would rather not register to vote than to, waste their time. And also, Awani, as they finish primary school, they migrate to South Africa, Botswana, and Zambia, and divorce themselves from the Zimbabwean national democratic processes. If we can go on to the next slide.
Let's go on to the next slide.
Right. These are perhaps some of the consequences of voter apathy. Okokuqala, no registration, no voting. That's the simple thing at play. If people don't register to vote, they won't be able to vote on that particular voting day. Then there's also the delimitation process, which my colleague from ZESNI spoke about. In 1980, 2000, with limited numbers in terms of constituencies. So there's likely to be a process for us to go back to that era. Then the death of representative democracy. This will further compound poor service delivery in the region. So there's need for us to encourage people to register to vote so that they benefit from the representative democracy. Let's go on to the next slide. Right, recommendations. I'm not able to see them on my end, but I'll just say them offhand. Recommendation number 1 is to the electoral body needs to scale up voter awareness. As we speak now, people are not, we askangeni electoral mode. People don't even know that there is a registration that is taking place at Famona, and it's so quiet. We can't see that there is an election that is less than 48 months away. And also there is need for CSOs, CBOs, and other non-state actors to complement the efforts of the electoral body. We know that the electoral body probably has got limited resources to carry out effective voter awareness. So there's need for for us as CSOs to come up with that. And lastly, my focus is on the Generation Z. There's need for CSOs and any other non-state actors to have creative ways of enticing the Generation Z to register to vote. And maybe lastly, as someone that is coming from a Christian organization, there's need for a holistic approach to the church to encourage the church to register to vote and also influence the youths therein to be part of the voting process. Thank you very much, Patinta.
Thank you so much, Nqobizitha, and very informative session that we had. And before I cross over to you, Fidelis, we have a question here. Maybe Mr. Ndlovu, I'll just run it through because a lot of questions are coming through. So I'd like for you to just note the question, then we come back to it later on so that I don't keep on scrolling back and forth. Mr. Ndlovu, kindly shed light on the delimitation process. And also, there was a question about census and can the delimitation, is it possible to conduct the delimitation after conducting a census, considering that there are so many issues on the ground? So, Mr. Ndlovu, if you can just hold on to those questions. Is it possible to conduct the delimitation after conducting a census, considering that there are so many issues on the ground? So, Fidelis, I would like to cross over to you, and we've had this discussion. Let's call it delimitation and the right to democracy, all those lovely technical terms. And Fidelis, what I'd like us to understand is what are the impacts on the ground? Maybe some more information. What does this mean if you don't register to vote? Yes, I understand this constitutional right and I understand my responsibility. But when it comes to matters that are on the ground, I'd like possibly a less technical explanation and a more something I can relate to say, I haven't registered, I haven't voted. So when things like this happen, like maybe your provision of water, your choosing of your MPs, those are an impact on your day-to-day life. So maybe if you can give us more light on that, Fidelis.
Actually, it's everyone's democratic right to participate in electoral processes. Hello?
Yebo, yes, please go ahead.
Your question is what is the negative impact if one does not register to vote?
Yes.
Is that so?
Yes, in our day-to-day lives.
Yes. Yeah. The problem is that one, if we don't register to vote, the problem is that someone will vote on your behalf. And if someone votes on your behalf, the problem is that the issues that you want to access, like access to water, access to school, and so forth, they will actually be determined by someone else. I'll give you an example. In Wange, when when Parliament is doing some consultative meetings, you realize that there are so many few people who there are very few people who actually participate.
Another thing, you're going to want my voter is you're going to have experience poor network. So if you want to have improved network, you should register to vote.
The problem is that if one doesn't register to vote, someone will actually register and vote on your behalf. And that person would actually, when he votes, or if she votes, she'll actually be voting to policies or certain service provisions that you might not like. So what a responsible citizen should do is to make sure that first of all you register to vote, and you vote for the candidate of your choice and the policies of your choice, so that you don't complain about poor service delivery.
So it is up to us, Fidelis, essentially, all our issues that trickle down to us are because we have not taken the stand to go through and vote. We've given up and we said, whatever, but we face the consequences of those actions every day. I think at this point in time, I would like to open up the panel to questions and answers. If you have a question, please raise your hand and hopefully I will pick on you. Let's see, I have two questions.
Yes, I'm still there.
Yes, Gutwa, what do you mean by saying someone will vote on my behalf?
It's fine. The reason why people vote is simply to choose the policies that will actually determine your right to your access to water, your access to education, the quality of education, the quality of roads, and so forth. So the moment that you don't vote, someone will actually speak on your behalf, will actually say, okay, instead of having a road, say maybe in Matebeleland, because the people of Matebeleland don't vote, the people of Mashonaland, they register in their numbers, they've got more constituencies. So when they go to parliament to discuss national issues, they'll definitely speak on behalf of their own people. So what it means is that we have to register in our numbers so that we have more constituencies.
As Sizwakele says, let's see who says, she says, he or she says, voting is a decision-making process. Therefore, in not participating in the process means someone else is making a decision for you. Sizwakele Chima. And that's basically what it means. It says, if you don't take your stand in being part of the process, and all these processes of voting, MPs, wards, up to presidential level, means there's somebody making decision on the impact. It will trickle down from your government down to your local government down to you. At this point in time, I will take questions and comments. I see a hand up. Please go ahead with your comment. Miss Vanda, please go ahead.
Thank you.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Just a question for Mr. Chima. As you mentioned, Harare naturally has more constituencies because they have a larger population of Mashonaland as a whole. If you know this beforehand, how do you then plan to inspire youth to go and register if we already know we are at disadvantage?
Okay, here the question is, if you already know that there's an area like Harare which has got a greater population anyway, what is the point of going out if the other sides are disadvantaged, as it were? Is that what hopefully I'm understanding it like that? Say, the people with lower populations are already at a disadvantage, so what's the point of going out to vote? Maybe Fidelis, Mr. Ndlovu, Nqobizitha, any of you can field that question?
I'm not sure of the question directly. My network was bumpy.
Okay.
But I think she was saying if there is a higher population, say in Harare,
Yes.
I don't know whether in terms of census or in terms of registered voters, and a lower population, for example, in Bulawayo, what is the point of voting? Generally, Zimbabwe vote in terms of constituencies and the wards. If you are voting for a councillor, it is the number of people in that particular ward that the councillor of their choice. MP, the number of people has in a constituency has 27,000, and then in Bulawayo maybe it's 22,000. At the end of the day, we are picking up one representative per constituency. But what is most important is the more you register, the more representatives, the more constituencies you have, then the more representation you have at decision making. So it doesn't matter whether Harare is a bigger population than Rwanda, but what is important is how many representatives, the maximum number of representatives that we can get in that particular constituency. I think that is what is important. And at the moment, what is more important, since we're talking about voter mobilization, is to make sure that all the eligible voters register. And then that will determine the number of constituencies, therefore determine the number of representations that we're going to have in decision making. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ndlovu. Before you go away, Gulumbuzo, why do I have to go to Famona to register to vote?
Why do we have to go to Famona? The constitution, you register, as long as you have your proper documents and you qualify, you register across the cycle. But the challenge, at the moment, we can talk about the restrictions that are there that might restrict ZEC to go out into the field. And some of the things might be economic, but we need to note that equation is very important. And the ZEC has to devise means to make sure that people easily access voter registration. There are some of the resolutions that we may come up with. But at the moment, that's the situation. We have to go to ZEC until and unless Zimbabwe Electoral Commission is given a go-ahead to have a police, like a voter mobile voter register. Usually does that towards advocating. Those mobile voter registration offices or the sub offices, USA, should always be there across the 5-year cycle so that people easily access. But at the moment, what we have at stake is that we have to go to ZEC provincial and district offices.
Okay. All right. So, Katesi, because of COVID and restrictions, you're saying that registration can only be undertaken at the offices because we are currently in a lockdown and therefore other centers have not been opened up. So without COVID, people
naturally ZEC is given a go-ahead at a time. I think that is administrative. It's given it's given that opportunity to go out. That is what we need to be fighting for. It should not be a bliss that comes and goes, but it should be a continuous, like the Constitution says, it should be continuous. There should be a sub-office in the fair and fine, sub-office in Karpako too, or even more because the people are looking for you. But if without COVID or without that administrative pattern of saying, no, now you can go, now you should not go, should be opened.
Okay, I've got a question from Busis. Oh, Donga. Okay, you've got a comment, Nqobizitha?
Yeah, I've got an observation that I've seen over the past 3 or 4 elections that I've observed. I think Umadlela can concur with me. ZEC or the electoral body usually opens or decentralize their services way very late. What you have to ask Famona, say register, and to someone, it's if Famona, there is a cost to that. So ZEC is, laxy, they open up or they decentralize very late in process here. So there's need for them to take note of that. That is my contribution.
Okay. So just to answer a certain question that popped up, registration at the moment can only be done at Famona for Bulawayo. Mr. Ndlovu, in other centers, Mat North and Mat South, where else can people go register in those centers? Would you have information on that?
Yes, I think in my presentation I did allude to the fact that ZEC district offices are in almost all the districts. I know Wange is there, Kwanda is the office is there. Unless maybe you need physical addresses, then we can assist later. But if you go to Kwanda, talking the hospice, you go to Kona Lake it's always open for that. Although district, there is a ZEC district office which is open for e-registration. If I'm on, there are two offices. We have Ibulawa and Umkuza. I think we can also access those two, but they're in one place, Company Famon. But actually, otherwise, in all Beitbridge, they are there. I know the district elections officers in Beitbridge. Thank you.
Okay, and so to answer a question, those are the centers. ZEC offices are open for registration, and in Famona Bobulawi, that's where you can go to register. So a lot of people don't know that voter registration has started, and I suppose this is where responsible citizenship comes in now. We are on social media, and there are so many times we can share constructive stuff. 87 people right now on this platform know that voter registration has started. And all it takes is sharing that on your WhatsApp platforms. You could put it on your status, you can alert people. It doesn't necessarily take a whole organization. Social responsibility as a citizen starts with you, because if you're already online, if you're already sharing jokes, if you're already sharing things like that, we can't keep on waiting and say somebody has to do the voter registration. If you can share a video, you can share laughs, you can share this, you can share something as important as the fact that voter registration has started. If we don't have any more comments, I would like to round up by having our panelists give us their rounding comments, their last comments. And yes, there's also a question here to say, is it necessary to vote when you don't trust the leadership skills of all the candidates to be voted for? I think at this point in time, what we are asking you to do, before we even go to vote, we are saying the most important thing now is to get out there and register to vote. Let us just get our vote, register to vote, and then the next phase will be voting. But if you don't register to vote, you will not be able to then vote. So the most important thing, my takeaway from this is let's get out there in our numbers. Let's just get there, get on that voter registration, on that voter's roll, get your name there. And then the next step is determining the candidates you want and having a debate on that. But right now, let's get our numbers, let's get our constituencies in place, and let's tackle it step by step. Mr. Ndlovu, do you have any final comments that you'd like to share?
Thank you very much. Actually, I would like to echo what Chima said when he was asked a question about if you don't register to vote, somebody will vote on your behalf. Fine, it might look a very literal and general statement, but what it means is that if you do not participate, our constitution encourages people to participate in electoral processes, but if you do not participate, others will participate on your behalf. They will choose a leader of their choice, not your choice. And that leader will decide your destiny, like in terms of service delivery. That leader will decide whether you have more ZESA or less ZESA, or ZESA should be cut or whatever. So the moment you make noise outside without participating, you are disadvantaging your future, disadvantaging your development in your area. So like we are saying rightfully now that the most important step to decide how you want to be governed, the most first step to decide that this country must be a democracy, it all starts with an election. And without registering, you can't participate in an election. So let's go out and register. We determine the number of constituencies that we have. We determine the number of representatives that those who want to go and vote can vote for. But by registering, you give us a first step of saying we are going to have so many representatives in Matebele North, so many representatives in Bulawayo. That on its own is very crucial. And those representatives, the more they are, the more power we have on decision making. So registering to vote actually determines our future. Thank you very much.
Okay, my final words are, let's go to Famona and register to vote. And also I've noted that the ZEC website is live. So you can just check your status on the ZEC website. I think maybe at the end of the show, we can just share the link with them. And just like what Madlela said, it is important to register to vote because as you are participating in an election, we are making a decision for the betterment of yourself and also of your community. So voting is, in essence, your constitutional right. So let's go there to register to vote.
Mr. Donga Ungakahambi, at this point in time, it is not possible to register online. Please confirm that. It is not possible to register online. It's possible to check your status.
Check your status, yes. Mm-hmm. You can check your status, but you cannot register to vote. You can check your status, yes. Okay.
Thank you so much, Mr. Donga. So just to answer all the questions that are coming through, it is not possible to register to vote online, but you can check if you've previously registered and you voted before, you can check whether you are still on the voters roll online. From the panel, we've had Mr. Ndlovu, Mr. Ndodana Ndhlovu, and he was representing ZESN, and we've had Nqobizitha Donga, as well as Mr. Fidelis Chima. And the objective of this roundtable is to start a conversation. This road to elections is a long one, and this is merely the beginning. It is essential to vote. My takeaways from this is go out to register to vote. You can't complain about constituencies shrinking in number when we have not registered to vote. And the most important thing is you need 27,000 registered voters, not residents, registered voters to make up a constituency in your area. So for now, I think this is all we have on the program on the Roundtable Series. We were having a chat on the effects of voter apathy. There's been so many wonderful points that came through, but please keep discussing this. If you can, please go out and register to vote now. Unfortunately, we are under a COVID lockdown, and it therefore restricts the number of centers that are actually open. But in Bulawayo, Katesi, Famona is open. So if you are able to go there and register, please go out there in your numbers. This is all on Asake Online. My name is Sizwakele Ndlovu. Please remember to mask up, maintain social distance, and please stay safe. And thank you for watching Asake Online. Bye for now.